Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this Insurance Nexus webinar on creating customer value with AI and analytics and using insurance claims to win customers' hearts. Firstly, would love to welcome the speakers we have. We have Svein from Fremtid Insurance, Head of Innovation Lab. Lorenzo is joining us from AXA, Lorenzo Morganti, Big Data AI Senior Project Lead, and also Christopher Franklin, who's moderating the session today, the founder of InsurTech 360. There's lots to talk about, so I'm not going to long out this introduction too much. What's really important for us today and what everybody is talking about at the moment is claims, where AI and analytics is impacting claims. Of course, there's investment from insurance companies and insurtechs in various functions across the insurance industry. And that can be underwriting, it can be product areas, but we're going to focus on claims today and how that is changing the relationship between the customer and the insurer. So I'm going to pass over to Christopher to introduce himself in the session. We'll be hearing from all of the speakers, and then the second half, there'll be lots of Q&A. So do submit your questions if you're listening. We'll store them up and we'll fire them at the panelists at the second half of the webinar. So Christopher, over to you.
Thank you, Graham, for the introduction. Yes, I am Christopher Franklin with InsurTech 360, the founder of InsurTech 360. Calling in all the way from Sydney, Australia, for this particular event. So welcome to everybody who's calling in around the world, wherever you might be. Look, I mean, I think this is such an important topic to discuss, and you know, I'm really happy to have the two panelists that we have because. On the call today, because I think that, you know, when we look at the customer experience around claims and we look at the ability to leverage technology, whether that be data analytics, AI, intelligent automation, I think that the piece that we always have to be cognizant of is you know, trying to find that right balance between you know, how we leverage people, process, and technology kind of through that end-to-end claims process. And you know, I think we have, you know, seen within the insurtech space some really exciting initiatives around, you know, around how claims can become a much more proactive experience. It can become a much more fulfilling experience for the insured, but at the same time, I think we all agree that there's a tremendous amount of work to be done, you know, around the claim space, and kind of especially around, you know, how we approach this kind of difficult area with, you know, and trying to find that balance between people and technology. So I will swiftly hand over to Svein, who will kind of give his remarks on this subject, and then we will move on to Lorenzo. And as Graham mentioned, please do send over your Q&A questions. I think it's an area where there's a lot of debate around how we can best approach it. So yeah, please do keep those coming. So Svein, I will hand over to you, and thanks everybody.
Thank you. My name's Svein Skogli. I'm a head of innovation lab in Fremtid Insurance in Norway. Fremtid is number 3 in the Norwegian market, number 2 in the retail market, with a market share of close to 25%. We have been working quite a lot in the area surrounding today's topic, and I'll just start with giving a brief introduction to to the Norwegian market and how this relates to our topics. And I think the Norwegian market is interesting for others to look at because of the digital maturity of the population, and I think we are ahead in some trends, especially connected to claims that will be of interest and have an effect for the future development also in other areas. What we see in the area of claims and insurance overall is that customer satisfaction is really important, and that the insurance companies, they compete on the customer satisfaction part. All insurance companies in the market have really high satisfaction scores. Currently, Fremtind is number 1, which we are proud of. But all the insurance companies have really good scores, also compared to other kinds of businesses. So when it comes to customer satisfaction and also loyalty, you will find insurance companies among other really strong brands like premium cars. What's also worth noting is that customers with claims are more satisfied than the customers that have not had claims. And in this, we also act on the trend moving from response to prevention. One of the analysis we have done is that we have compared the customer satisfaction with the customer's actual behavior. And what we find in doing that is that it's really important to be good enough in the claims process, but at the same time, the effect of raising a satisfaction score on a scale from 1 to 6, from 5 to 6, the effect is quite limited. But the most important to achieve the satisfied customers is to have the brilliant basics. And in that, we need to streamline our core processes and response on the customer's expectation of high speed and immediate response on claims. We have some examples on where we have started using advanced analytics, machine learning, AI, in different areas connected to claims, and also some more loosely related to claims, but still of interest. And some of them is, or the first one is that we have actually started using machine learning with image recognition on the process of windscreen claims. That is an area with really high volume, a high risk of fraud, and great value on automation. We also use machine learning in behavioral segmenting of customers. That is an area that has caught a lot of attention, both internally and also in our surroundings. That we now with IoT are starting to get for the first time objective behavioral data that we can include and combine with other kinds of traditional insurance data to segment the customer space and behavior. We see an immediate value in the development of new products and services, but it's very likely that this is also something that could be used in the customer processing, customer engagement in a claims process. Last but not least, we have also tested to quite large extent how we can use out-of-the-shelf components, machine learning components, in order to make this more mainstream in our processes and not have the need of data scientists for all the processes where we want to use advanced analytics. The results are quite interesting, and we see that there are some low-hanging fruits that can be used. or that can be picked in order to gain value fast. And this means, just to sum up, that some of our focus areas in this is, number one is access to data, to be able to get hold of the data we need to perform the advanced analytics. Of course, as an insurance company, we have a lot of traditional insurance data. Those still have value. We are looking at IoT and other new sources. We have had a telematics-based motor insurance for more than 2 years, and we see that the value of the behavioral data we collect is really, really high. So it's not about risk and pricing when it comes to IoT, it's about behavior. And then, of course, more traditionally, we also buy access to other kinds of data from external databases and so on, which can be used to support the extent of the analysis. In addition to access to data, we focus a lot on becoming data-driven, building analytics capabilities, both traditional but also in the advanced analytics, and we're currently having a ML AI department with approximately 10 people, which act as a spearhead for the rest of the organization in using and creating value through the advanced analytics. I think that's the introduction, Chris.
Svein, thank you so much. I think we covered there quite a lot of interesting topics, and I do encourage people to keep the questions coming through as we move on to Lorenzo with AXA. And Lorenzo, if you would talk a little bit about your experience around AI analytics, and really kind of some of the things that you are seeing in the claims area, around enhancing and improving the claims customer experience.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Chris, and thank you, Svein. So maybe first I'll just briefly introduce myself. So I'm Lorenzo, and I'm working at AXA, based in Paris. And I'm a project manager in the Data and Technology Innovation Hub of AXA. Currently I'm managing projects in two main areas. One is the claims analytics team, where it's of course the topic of this webinar. And the second is IoT and telematics team. So I try to put together all the bits and pieces of the projects to then deploy our flagship applications that we've been developing, and also then create something new. So that's why we work in innovation, trying to shape new forms of insurance paradigms and activities that can help our entities across the globe. Now, maybe before jumping into the topic of the webinar, maybe I'll briefly then present AXA to those of you who don't know it. Maybe so it's of course is one of the leading insurance groups in the world, with more than 100 million customers in more than 60 countries in the world, and with 100 billion euro of revenues. And so we're based in Paris as the innovation hub, but we have like 3 offices also to cover the geographical areas of the insurance group of AXA. So one is in Singapore, looking after the Asian cluster, and one is in Lausanne, looking to tie up links with universities and startups in Switzerland, and another one in San Francisco, trying to foster the communities there in the Silicon Valley and all around the Silicon Valley. So just maybe touching on the strategy of AXA. This is quite similar to what Svein just mentioned earlier. what we do, we focus on one of the pillars of the AXA strategy, which is becoming a partner rather than a payer. So, which means that we would like to disrupt the paradigm of the insurance company paying out claims after underwriting the risk and collecting the premium of the customer. So we would rather become a partner to our customers, whereas being just a payer. So this means to be able to provide superior customer value, of course, but then additional services based mostly on data, because then AXA also has another pillar, which is being a tech-led company. So putting technology at the heart, at the core of our activities, to be able to be nimble enough and serve our customers in a new way, and let's say modernize and review the long-standing traditional image of insurers from the past, to be able to move faster like a big, large company as AXA, which is spread across 60 countries. So the hub where I'm at is called AXA Rev, actually, and so the name stands for Research, Engineering and Vision. And as I said, we're main focus on technology and innovation. So what we do here, we actually do large investments that our entities at local level are not able to do. And of course, claims is one of the main focus that we have. And among others, we also touch on conversational AI, so chatbots and all around chatbots, and advanced machine learning, computer vision platforms, and natural language processing. And all of them are mostly involved into the claim scenario. So here at the Rev, 3 years ago, we launched an initiative aimed at tackling fraud and claims at large. So it was a long journey because we didn't have anything, and we decided to build something internal to tackle the claim space and to improve how entities fought fraud at that time and how they handle claims, and of course, ultimately, how they serve customers, because we should not forget that what we do on the company side, let's say, it's reverberated, of course, towards the customer, either directly or indirectly. So the initiative, which was called, of course, fraud, begun by building a flagship application, which now we call Sherlock, and of course the name is not a coincidence, because it's used by entities to prioritize suspicious claims by raising alerts based on suspicion levels ranked by a data science machine learning model which runs in the background. And so when claims are scored, then they are investigated and looked at by fraud handlers or by claims handlers, depending on how the entity is organized internally. And of course, it's a one-stop shop for fraud handlers, but it's an add-on for claims handlers who will always have the claim system at their side to process claims and then settle the claims eventually. So the application also allows to visualize connections. So we have a network which we call to visualize, for example, people involved in a claim, vehicles, lawyers, phone numbers and emails. And this helps to have all the data points related to the claims and then connect them all together to find whether there is a fraud ring, a fraud scheme going on, and then it helps the investigator to find where the suspiciousness comes from, and eventually to pursue an investigation on the field to stop the payment or maybe to recoup the money from illegitimate claims. So now you might be wondering why we do that. Of course, to save money from a fraud perspective, but also to then improve the way a company can price the the products, because of course once you save money from fraud, you also be able to serve customers by offering a tailored pricing and a better product in terms of offering. So, well, this was just the beginning, as I said. So now we're trying to add more components, as we are busy now building an holistic ecosystem around the fraud application. So we are now adding new business lines. So we began by motor, and now we're adding property, health, and travel and other business lines. But also we are adding new types of fraud, for example, underwriting fraud, to help our colleagues in pricing and underwriting to spot fraudulent customers before they underwrite the risk. And also image analysis, is what also Svein touched on briefly earlier. So by applying vision technology to images shot by customers or by claims adjuster, claim assessors, to identify the damage and then be able to estimate the claims cost, the labor cost, and then eventually pay a claim faster. Or maybe if the image is deemed suspicious by the algorithm, then of course flag an alert to the fraud team. Another component we're adding now would be actually trying to tie up with entities to develop some natural language processing technology to interpret text into claim reports, customer emails and complaints. So this is of course to speed up the claim process and be able to interpret what's inside the documents that the insurance company receives in terms of claim reports and customer emails. So to be able to triage the emails to the right department of the company, and then of course speed up the lead time of response to the customer, and also complaints, to categorize the complaints into the right category and the right department, which needs to look after the resolution of the complaint. So today, speaking of the geographical reach, the application is live in 4 countries. We have now Italy with 2 entities running the Sherlock application, the UK running also the Sherlock application for motor, and the one for health also, and China. Also, we were based last year rolling out in China for motor, and also in Hong Kong. So our colleagues in Hong Kong are running the application for health fraud at this stage. And we have, of course, many use cases running and in the pipeline with more entities willing to test and learn. So doing some POCs to develop what I mentioned earlier. So on the underwriting fraud, again, developing more and more health, and also claims automation to streamline the claims process end to end, especially for those claims which do not require a human intervention. So we're trying to split claims into several categories to find those who can easily be paid out without human intervention. So in just applying an algorithm which is able to collect all data from internal and external data sources, and then assess, as I said, the value, and then either pay out or flag the claim to the fraud team, or just have it follow the normal process for claim settlement. So yeah, as I said, again, the application is now bound to be modular, and we are also aiming at connecting the telematics space, because at AXA we are also advanced in the IoT and telematics space, where we have several entities running like our platform connected to the black boxes installed on cars. So we collect data here in Paris from hundreds of thousands of cars from across the globe, and these also can be used as a claims enabler. Today, we mainly use those data for pricing and for prevention purposes. But in the future, what the aim is to connect telematics data to the same ecosystem I was mentioning earlier, to be able to then again treat and process claims in a better way, in a more nimble way, and then serve the customers better to deliver value on their end ultimately. I think this is it. You can take over from here, Chris.
Great, so
hope it was clear enough.
Mate, I think that was terrific. I mean, obviously, it sounds like that you've been doing a ton of work around innovation, leveraging new innovative pieces of technology. You mentioned chatbots, voice. Obviously, these are all channels which we are looking to leverage to create a much better claims experience. I do have a number of questions for the two of you, and we're coming up on half an hour, which is amazing. So let me start asking a few questions, gents, and just to kind of get your thoughts around a few things. A question for the two of you: how can insurers understand a vast landscape of AI experts and find the best fit? How do you both assess external providers in that capacity?
I can start up from our side. We have seen that these advanced analytics is actually a part of the core competence we need to have internally, and we have by building or started to build a strong internal competence center for ML AI. We have been able to attract good resources, and that means that in addition to have this competence in-house, we also have a good competence to buy competence from the outside, because we have the kind of competence we need in order to assess and evaluate external providers.
Thank you.
So from our perspective at AXA, so firstly, so we try to build something internally. So what at AXA Repsol Innovation Hub, we have a series of skills and competencies that allow us to build some technologies or to deep dive and shape something internally. But yes, so of course, sometimes you need external help, so providers from the market. So what we do a market search, also like participate into conferences and into meetings in Europe especially, and then we try to assess internally whether the provider is what we're looking for. Maybe we continue searching, but I mean, to be honest, the majority of the activities and even new stuff is done internally. So what we do, we set up a team of professionals and experts, and then we try to understand how we can tackle it internally. Maybe then hiring some external professionals from the market, but then have them working inside the hub and inside our teams.
Yeah. Just to add on slightly to that one, in the area of IoT, we typically see that we need assistance in order to get access to data that are processed in some way, and where a lot of the advanced analytics is done on the outside. And our experience there is that that's an area where we really need to heavily test, and we spend quite a lot of time on testing the solutions from the different suppliers. We hold the results up against each other in order to compare and see who's actually delivering on the promises they give, and there is a great deal of variation.
Excellent, thank you both of you. So I think a question that sort of ties in with that topic. Lorenzo, question to you. How does AXA quantify innovation, and how do you convince C-level execs of the specific ROI for the time and technology around investments that you are making in that kind of vast array of technology projects?
I mean, we have, of course, a process then to approach our entities. So I guess your question is how we convince local entities, executives, to then deploy some of our technologies, or how we engage the senior management here in Paris.
I think, yeah, I think even from the innovation point of view, how do you start having that conversation around something like chatbots, voice? I mean, how do you kind of get buy-in from the C-level to even kick off a project or kind of a type of innovation or tech-related investment?
Right. So, well, as I said, now one of the pillars of AXA is to become a tech-led company. So, luckily, our senior management is very keen to all technology-intensive topics and activities. So, let's say that the willingness of invest into this kind of innovation is relatively, I would say, moderately high. So we are trying to make use of the investment in the best way, trying then to deliver value quickly in entities and show that we have a very good track record for past use cases that were deployed in entities. And that's like the best business card that we can propose and present to our senior management here in Paris, to showcase that what we're doing is actually delivering on the promise to improve customer value first, but also improving local processes, savings in terms of like money savings, and then also FTE savings. So like if we're using people for other activities rather than activities that can be automated thanks to machine learning and chatbots and computer vision. So this is, I think, the best harbinger that our activities are again, as I said, delivering value and I mean, really supporting entities from the group, because we don't want to be like the like group offers like pushing a top-down innovation. So what we try to do also, we try to co-create. So when you jump into the co-creation space, it's much easier than to get the buy-in from entities and from local companies to then be involved and engaged in what we do. So it's also easier to get senior management buy-in and engagement, rather than just saying, okay, we've got this fantastic innovation which works perfectly, and we want to deploy it in your entity, and you have no choice. So it's just yes or yes. No, actually, we do it differently. So we try to engage the teams from the beginning, try to co-create the POC, co-create the pilot, and then decide together whether we deploy and then we scale. So I think this is the best way to do innovation, especially with regards to your question, so how we get the buy-in in Paris and local entities. So yeah, we believe this is the right way to do it.
Fantastic, thanks, Lorenzo. And so just to kind of touch upon the the process. It sounds like you have kind of an area of governance there. You have processes in place that enable you to innovate more efficiently and quickly internally. Are those things that you kind of put in place, as you kicked off that particular group, or are those pieces that you've matured over time and kind of perfected in different ways?
So if I can answer from my perspective, so we have different POCs going on now, and also in the past. And to be honest, some of them were not entirely successful. So I think that's what innovation is about. So test and learn. So you test something and you try to make it fly, but sometimes you realize that the investment is not worth it. So you divert investment to something different. So we try to make it grow from the beginning to make something embryonic, which then we pitch to entities and try to convince them to co-create with us and then deploy and see how to scale. But as I said, sometimes it doesn't work, sometimes it does work, and then in that case, we take the embryonic stage and we make it fly and we make it go up to 10,000 feet.
Absolutely, brilliant. Okay, thank you, Lorenzo. So Ryan, how will the work that you are currently doing around windscreen fraud impact your profitability, and how does that compare to the investment?
Well, the solution that is set up is to handle the windscreen claims, which are already quite highly automated. The effect we have seen is that the previous process was that we had someone to do like test samples on the windscreen claims, because the volume is very high. Do test samples to check all parts, both with the repair shop and the customer history, for example. What is now happening is that this selection of suspicious claims is done through this machine learning system with the image recognition, and it means that we find the right suspicious claims. The work of those people working with the suspicious claims have become a lot more interesting, because now 9 out of 10 cases they get in their hands are really suspicious, while previously maybe it was 1 out of 100 when they just did the sample. The absolute effect of on the profitability, I do not have any figures on that, but this is quite definite that we now are to much larger extent able to pick up out the fraudulent claims, and also the cases where there's a fraud attempt from the repair shop, which actually is the biggest problem when it comes to windscreen claims.
Thank you. Question for both of you, and Lorenzo, happy for you to have the first shot. Which business lines currently are making the best use of data to handle claims, and where do you see the most potential in the future?
Yeah, so I can answer. I can answer from an AXA perspective. So today, and actually it's the business line we started with in the beginning, results are coming from the motor business line. Well, I mean, obviously because it's a business line where you've got a huge bulk of data from customers, and also from external data sources. Usually in mature countries, you would have a central fraud bureau collecting info from all insurers and then sharing the info to the single insurers. And those data are really valuable. So on top of the data you would receive from internal databases, you can also leverage external data, and this is really valuable for like detecting fraud and then help the claims department in reshaping their activity and overhauling the claims process. But so as I said, now we are also entering the property business line, which seems a very profitable one, although very specific and with a very different rules in it. So we need to develop data models which are slightly different and require a high level of attention to be able to capture all the subtleties that you have in the property business. But by far the line of business where we see the most value is by far the health business. Although I mean we're trying to launch POCs in health in Europe, in the Asian cluster, and in Latin America now. We're actually busy trying to scale up our activities in health. But like that said, I have to recognize that it's not entirely easy to do that because the health business is very specific from country to country due to regulation, due to how the health market and the health business is organized. So you need a very specific and tailored approach for each country to be able to build a data model and a machine learning algorithm that is able to capture all the as I said, all the subtleties and the specificities of the local market. So it's a bit difficult to generalize, whereas with motor, it's a bit easier to build a general data model that can be reapplied and reused in several countries. But yes, so health is going to keep us busy for the next few months and if not years.
Cool. Thank you. Right.
Yeah, well, I actually started with a comment to what was said about the motor telematics and claims, because I think it's an illustration that this is probably quite market specific. We collect telematics data from quite a large share of the vehicles we insure, but we cannot use it in the claims process. The reason is that we have a market built on trust, and our insights shows that the biggest barrier for starting using a telematic solution with cars is the fear that the insurance company will be unfair in using telematics data when an accident occur and when a motor claim is processed. So no one involved in the processing of a claim will have access to any telematics data from a car. That is very different from what we see in other European markets and other markets around the world. But it's an example on how we need to adapt to the local market with the solutions. When it comes to where the value will be highest for us, it's definitely in the area where we have the well, in the short run, it's in the area where we have the highest volumes, and both within travel insurance and home content insurance, we have a market share of about 50% for home content insurance. There's a huge potential for self-servicing claims with no human intervention. The volumes are high, and that's where we need advanced solutions in order to fully automate the claims processing, and that will have a huge effect both in cost, but also in the customer engagement part, because the customers will be able to have an instant resolution to their claim when the process is fully automated.
Thank you both of you. And just to expand on that last comment that you made. So looking at the claims portion of the insurance life cycle, I think without a doubt, it's the most emotional kind of piece of the puzzle. When we look at technology, when we look at all of the things that we've been talking about today, how do you, first to you, how do you see the emotional component still being looked after and catered to during that claims process? And I know it's a delicate thing to balance automation, to balance technology with that human piece. But how do we still maintain that emotional connection with the customer?
Oh, that's a topic we spend quite a lot of time discussing, and what we see is that what we can and what we should automate is what's inside the comfort zone of the customer, and we should use our human resources when we are in an area where we are outside the comfort zone of the customer. Of course, that really depends on the customer. To some, it might be a full crisis if their bag is delayed when they're out flying. But for most of us, that's just it's an occurrence where you are very comfortable in just pressing a button on your phone and then receive the money so you can go shop for new clothes. So it's not necessarily about reducing the amount of people use, but it's more a way of freeing up resources so you can spend even more resources on where you need this human touch and handle the emotional situations.
Great answer. Thank you. Lorenzo?
Yeah, so from our perspective, so we tried in the past some examples of gamification. So we try to involve customers in some games related to how they drive and their driving behavior. So to give some tips and tricks on how to drive better, on how to smoothen their way of driving, and then of course prevent claims or just some risk prevention on their side. But now what we're trying to do, as I said, with regards to claims automation, so we're trying to leverage the app that AXA is rolling out in countries, which is called My AXA. And so inside the My AXA app, well, along with several functions you can have and do to you can contact the company, you can ask for a quote, or you can just browse the portfolio of the insurer, but also you can file a claim. And by filing a claim, as I said, and the customer is able to shoot pictures to the damaged car when the claim happens, and once we will be able to apply vision technology and claims automation, so the customer will have his claim paid in a matter of seconds, because once you have real-time connection with our cloud infrastructure sitting on Amazon Web Services, it's just a matter of seconds to send the request to the cloud, assess the claim, get the information from spare parts databases and from labor cost databases in each country, and then pay the claim or just send the assessment and pay the claim in due course in 1 or 2 days. So I think this would be like a very, very good advancement in how claims are processed and settled by an insurer to avoid any hassle in how the customer needs to interact with the insurer and get the claim paid in a matter of minutes, if possible, hours, or at the very latest in 1 day.
Great, excellent. Thank you. So Lorenzo, kind of a couple of quick questions for you. Have you managed already to assess the impact on cost and fraud reduction since the Sherlock app launch?
Yes, so we have some evidence from especially from Italy, and so to give you an example, so they had previous application which was from a competitor, of course, and so they used it, and they were already achieving good results in terms of fraud savings. But then after we rolled out and we built together the model, so rather than having a black box data science model, which was running an algorithm which they didn't have any idea of, we built together the data science model linked to their requirements and their specificities, so they were happy with this approach. And so since they deployed and they started using the application last year, they tripled the savings. They're making, so the application is already yielding 3 times as much the savings from fraudulent claims they were having in the past. And of course now they are reusing these savings, so there's money to invest into customer related projects. So this is an example how we deliver customer value to the final customer. So improving and increasing the savings from fraudulent claims and reinvesting the money towards delivering better service and a higher customer value to the final customer.
Excellent. And then just adding on to that, out of average, how many of out of 10 POCs do you kind of see meeting AXA XL's expectations?
So can you repeat the question?
So yeah, so we had somebody ask. I think it was more a question around really, you know, how many I don't know whether it can be a percentage or just a number, but you know, what percentage of POCs that you guys are currently working on really end up meeting AXA XL's expectations, and is that something that you can really quantify and put a percentage to?
Right. Okay. So I understand the question. So, well, I'd say that we never built a KPI around that, to be honest. In all fairness, but I mean the vast majority of our POCs are then successful. Absolutely. Maybe yielding like few like not as a result as big as it was expected. Maybe sometimes. But as a first step, as being a POC is already a very good example of how they can harness the power of the data and then build on it. Because going back to our strategist one, just very briefly, so one of our main goals also is not just, as I said, to push innovation down to the entities, but also upskill the local teams. So the POCs that we do are also aimed at upskilling and give some abilities to the local teams to then develop something autonomously internally. So for us, the best outcome for a POC is that the local entity takes over the POC and then develops it further to make it successful. I mean, by themselves. So what we do is we invest money to develop something, deliver something, but then the best outcome is then to develop it further and then scale it internally.
Yeah.
If you answer your question.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I have perspective on that because we have also the same result that more POCs are successful than not, and that I think means that too many are successful. It means that we are probably not radical enough in our innovation approach, and we need to be a bit bolder when it comes to what we try to achieve in order to disrupt ourselves.
Fantastic. I think that's a great perspective, Ryan. And you know, what I love about being in the innovation space and seeing innovation within what are typically considered incumbent type companies. I think the qualitative impacts, which are difficult to measure, seeing how technology and really kind of whether it's lean process mapping or just different ways of thinking, customer journey mapping. I think these are all capabilities that sometimes it's not always easy to measure the quantitative impacts, but seeing the kind of knock-on effects within an organization, within the company culture, is really quite impressive. Before I wrap up and hand back to Graham, I do want to thank both of you for your insights. We did have some other questions that unfortunately we did not quite have time to get to today. But I think from my perspective in wrapping up, we are seeing increasingly technology, people, process, and technology really, and data obviously coming together to solve what has and what still is a very complex and behavioral focused problem. And it's encouraging to hear both of you talk about thinking about the customer, putting the customer first, thinking about the emotional components of the claims experience, at the same time as thinking about the efficiency focus areas. So Graham, I will hand back over to you to kind of wrap up the session, and again, thank you both of you.
Thanks, Christopher. Thanks a lot for moderating the session today, and thank you, Svein and Lorenzo, for your insights. It's been really interesting to hear how your companies are approaching not only areas of claims and analytics and technology integration, but on a wider perspective, the approaches to innovation, the culture of innovation, which is obviously very positive within your organizations, and there's a lot of support there, which is great to hear. And I think it gives other insurers encouragement and confidence to be bold and to move forwards with what they want to achieve too, which ultimately is providing something truly intuitive and beneficial to the customer, because at the end of the day, that's what makes or breaks insurers. Just a quick note on the main event, which is Connected Claims Europe in September. On the 18th and 19th, do go to the website and find out more about that. We have lots of organizations from across Europe speaking around not only strategic and innovation areas within claims, but also the journey side, the technology, the AI, the analytics, and lots of case studies from insurers on real practical advice on what they're enacting. So do take a look at that, and also keep up with us and engage with us on LinkedIn. Add us on there. I'm sure the guys will be happy to hear from you, and myself too, if you have any feedback or if you're interested in claims innovation on a wider perspective. So thanks again for everybody for speaking, and for those attending today. We hope to see you again shortly in the near future, and have a great week. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.